Is it time?
Welcome to this episode of the Talent Forge, where we are shaping the future of talent development. Today, I am joined by special guest Stephen Falk. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jay, and thanks for getting me on the Talent Forge. Hey, for those of you that want an introduction, Stephen Falk, of course, I'm the CEO and founder of Switchback OS, and we are a consulting firm that works primarily in heavy industry and wildland fire, but really our message and our methodology is transferable almost anywhere. So there's lots that we can get into. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this discussion all week. So, Stephen, what you had a transition, right? So, in reading your bio and understanding about you, you started in one place and then you have stepped into this talent development world and brought all of those skills with you. Give us a little bit of background on that.
Oh, sure. I mean, and just for your listeners, you want to develop this story for yourselves as well, because this is a story that you want to be able to tell really naturally. So I married well to begin with, and that's what got me finished college because she did half my homework and got me through graduate school. So I was the most unlikely graduate student to get a master's in marriage and family therapy. However, they were taking bets in the staff room how long I'd last, and I ended up being their valedictorian. I would say that is the power
Nice.
of teamwork as opposed to individual effort. And so we made it. It was amazing. And even my friends like, Stephen Falk, you're going to be a marriage and family therapist. Like, oh, we didn't see that coming. So I loved it. I loved it, loved it, loved it. My wife and I ran a private practice. She tested brains. I did therapy. We ran that for 22 years, raised four
Wow.
kids, just did our thing, right? And just were so involved. But I always knew there was more. So in my story, I have this little picture that says, I just want to make it a little bit bigger splash. But we talked to each other as a couple and said, hey, no splashing going on here while we committed to four kids. This is not the time in the season to be changing the world. So, as it would be, it's one of those interesting things that you can study right into the minutia. So my wife kind of slapped me on the rear end basically and said, Steve, I think we're close. It's almost your time to go change the world. And I go, okay. So all
Let's do it.
you kind of put your antennas up and go, what's going on? And we were in the thick of it. So I was coaching like two hockey teams, like not fancy teams, just like house hockey teams. And we're starting a new season. And I'm the only family therapist in our house league. Everyone else are just normal, regular, nice people, right? I'm the weirdo, right? And so we're making up the teams, the 8 teams in the house hockey team league, and we get this kid that's coming from rep. So if you're not in, that's like the travel team, and that's like in Canada. I'm from Canada, Vancouver Island on the west coast. So travel team is like, oh, you're definitely going pro, right? And this is 14-year-olds. So this 14-year-old got cut from the tryouts. He was hyper talented, but he had a terrible, toxic attitude. And
Mm,
so, how many players does it take to ruin one hockey team?
just one.
But how many, middle managers does it take to ruin an entire organization? Just one,
Just
right?
one.
So he was the one. So he got bumped into the house hockey league, and they all sat around and said, Steve, your team is just filled up with like nephews and nieces and non-skaters. I think you need this guy. Plus, you're kind of qualified and certified to hang out with him. So it was this amazing opportunity. He came down, he was like a raccoon in the corner. He was just spitting and growling, and his dad's all mad. So I ask your listeners, what kind of time frame do you have to win him over? Like half the season, Jay, what do you think?
Real fast.
Real fast.
Otherwise, he ain't going to work on that team. And in addition to that, he is going to drive the performance of the whole team down.
Yeah, so you talk quite a bit about like behavior, like how to go into the behavior world. So I literally used all the tricks I could think of. So walk in there, see him, I just plunk myself right down on the bench beside him. I take up my space. I throw my tail up in the air as the alpha, wolf in the wolf pack, but I'm coming across real friendly. I lean into him and go, sucks to be in house. Lucky us. Too bad for you. And I go, what's your superpower, man? He goes, I got a really great shot. I go, okay, we'll do it. I will set you up for success. It's going to be awesome. Do you know
How do you?
anybody on this team? He goes, I know this one guy. He goes, hey, come over here. Sit with us. We need to make a plan right now. And this is like 20 seconds in. And of course, like 3, 4 weeks into it, This kid is, we call it in team in Switchback. He went from out of team as an independent, rebellious, toxic 14-year-old to in team, loving his team. His dad, meanwhile, is out of team still. He's still wearing the black leather jacket, and all the
Mm.
parents are like hanging out on the top row of the stands. And, in Canadian hockey culture, he's at the far end of the rink, standing there with the big pose, like arms like this.
Oh yeah.
I'm not part of this house hockey culture. I'm a rep hockey coach. I'm a travel parent, not a house hockey parent. So it was fun. Finally, this kid had to tune up his dad and say, "Hey, Dad, I'm happy. Like, take a pill. Like seriously, I'm happy. I'm having the time of my life." And he was great. We lined him up with a non-skater that had been playing soccer, but he was very talented, but didn't know how to skate. And so this kid was fearless. We say, "Okay, we got the booming shot coming from the point. You're willing to screen the goalie and tip everything in with your butt. So you guys are the magic combo. Just see if you can get your skates to go there." And then we had the time of our life. So I tell you the story because you never know, as a consultant, as a trainer, running your own entrepreneurial business, when sort of the magic's going to happen. You don't know when you're making contact with somebody that's going to all of a sudden become a referral for you, or open the door for you. And I love the saying that says, "Stop for the one." I think Mother Teresa was the one that coined it first, but others have coined it since. Mother Teresa, some people asked her, said, "How do you cope with like world fame?" She goes, "I don't even think about it. I just think about the one person that's in front of me. So if I'm on a flight and someone's sitting beside me, that's it. The whole world just becomes the two of us. If
Being
I'm in
present.
Calcutta and I'm dragging someone out of the slums, and I'm washing them and holding their hand as they die, one person. If I'm, in the Oval Office, one person." And
Powerful.
so I would encourage your listeners, just like, come on. It's like, of course, it's always great to visualize the big grand and everything else, but there is something that people perceive when we what's called stop for the one. And in this
You
case,
know,
it's that one.
in this, unpacking that just a little bit, I love how you approach that. And I think about this. So any of you trainers, coaches, or HR people out there that have that one outlier, really break down what Stephen did there. First of all, he stepped in and he called out, more than likely, exactly how he was feeling. This sucks for you. It's great for us, but it sucks for you. I really like how you did that because number one, you're seeing them, you're validating how they're feeling and not telling them, don't feel bad, don't be upset. We'll get you taken care of. You didn't do any of that. You said, "Yep, this sucks. You're probably pissed. More than likely, you feel like you don't belong here. It's great for us. So let's see if we can make something of it." The second thing I really, really love that you did was you found what his superpower was, or you asked what that superpower was, meaning, what do you value about yourself? And then you jumped all over that and created the conditions for that person to leverage their strengths. Bringing in somebody else from the team, you've now established oxytocin
Yeah.
flowing through his brain. Like, I've got a coach that gets it,
Yeah.
that got a coach that wants to use this. I've got a friend here. We're going to come up with a plan and we're going to go forward. I love the sequencing that you put together for this. And I think about that from a training perspective. How many times have we had that one person in the audience that doesn't want to be there, that doesn't want to engage, that doesn't want to participate in the same way, or that one person that just constantly wants to pose a challenge? Really think about that sequence, audience, because it's a powerful one to take somebody, and I don't want to mess up the language that you use at Switched On, but in group, essentially in group versus out group, and bringing somebody from that outside and
In
turning them
team, out of
into an
team.
advocate.
In
Yeah,
team,
in
out of
team
team.
and out of team. I love that. So you transition and you come into the talent development space, helping CEOs, helping organizations, and really sort of bridging it. And it was funny because as I was reading your bio, and it was like, okay, 22 years of experience in marriage and family therapy. And a lot of times the organizations that we're training, that we're leading, that we're organizing, they take on this sort of family dynamic, even if it's a work family or anything else. And I know that there's a lot of discussion. Well, don't call it a family because it's not family, or yes, we are a family, so on and so forth. But can you share what are some insights that we should be thinking about, the organizations that we're working in developing? How does that relate to like family therapy?
Oh, that's really good. So my bend to family therapy was systems theory.
Mm.
So system theory says that if you can understand the system, you can understand the individual. And individuals are often manifesting what's going on in the system. So the rebellious 14-year-old is actually sometimes the healthiest person in the family group. Dad's an alcoholic, mom's addicted to this, brother's, doing this. And this 14-year-old goes, my family's screwed up. And so it used to be back in the day. It was really fun. I enjoyed it. Someone would call me, right, find me in the phone book back in those phone book days and go, yeah, I wonder if I could book an appointment for my daughter. She needs a tune up. I go, oh yeah, no problem. When's a good time for your family to come? You go, oh, hold on a second. No, I just want you to work with my daughter. Say, well, sorry, no sale. Who's in your family? So, well, there's my wife and our two sons. And say, great. So when's a good time for like what's that? When 5 of you to come after school? Like what's going to work? I hated it. But what a corporate, what do you call it? Insight you get to the boardroom if you get all the players in the room at the same time. And so there's a lot of crossover from a systems point of view as to what the dynamics that go on in a multi-generational family to what goes on within an organization. Can I pick up that hockey story just to close the loop there?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so here's the story. There is like the biggest logging company on Vancouver Island. This guy with the black jacket, he was a regional manager.
Mm.
Who knew? I didn't even know.
Mm.
So they're having a conversation in their boardroom. They have 1,500 employees. They're killing about 3 to 4 people a year, which is not great. And they have this one operation it averages 50 grievances a year with 80 employees. So about 12 managers, 80 employees. And it is just rooted in toxic patterns of family dysfunction. So they're banging around ideas in the boardroom. We got to turn this thing around because this operation is going to be the next one to kill somebody. And they're going, well, this university or maybe Stephen Covey or this, like they're throwing all these different ideas, right? And this guy finally standing there in the, how some people don't sit at the boardroom, standing at the edge of leaning against the wall. Hold on, this we're throwing around a bunch of BS. He goes, I think we should give my kid's hockey coach a try.
Call in Coach Steven. That's awesome.
So funny. And so my phone rang and I said, hey, this is, in this case, Western Forest Products. And can we have a conversation with you? We want you to work with one of our operations. Out of the blue, other than my wife and I had set our intentions and saying, okay, it's our cycle of, the seasons of life is you're almost ready to go change the world. So get ready. Like we were buckled in, ready to go. We were waiting at the red phone for it to ring. When it rang, I had positioned already sort of from a neuroscience point of view, I positioned myself to go. I had the go bag ready. And so when they said, are you interested? Hello, thank you, perfect timing. And so without a program, without a training model, I just said yes. And I know it's going to sound wimpy, but I took my little Kia Rio to the north end of Vancouver Island. And eventually they said, you can't even drive it here. I have to give you a drive. You have to drive in my truck because you're not going to have a car if you get all the way to our logging camp. So no problem, which is, again, team. Driving in with the supervisors, with the managers, with these different people. I showed a level of vulnerability and need with my little Kia Rio. And as a result, they were able to, escort me into all these hot spots of, talking. So I just talked and trained and did everything that I normally do as a family therapist. Within 1 year, they went from 50 grievances to 4 with the same people. And that turned heads. So I didn't go in my goal was not to, deliver some information. My goal was transformation. And I think that is also for your listeners is have a little conversation with yourself, because we get nervous and it's kind of high stakes, and it's high stakes for the other side too. They're on the other end of the phone going, hey, don't mess with my reputation. I'm taking a chance on you as a consultant or as a coach. Like don't embarrass me and elevate my status. And so we sometimes, as a result, we dial it back rather than dial it up. So we go the safe route rather than the transformational route. And I would really encourage, your listeners, your careers are only so big. Like there's the window is actually shorter than you think. Go with the transformational model. It's better for you, it's better for your clients, makes the world a better place. Jay, you're thinking about something.
Oh yeah, because well, and I love so there's a lot to unpack there. One of the things that I heard you say is you didn't walk into that room with a ready to go PowerPoint. You didn't walk into that room with all of these, here's 16 ways that you can communicate more effectively. You walked into that room in an adaptable and agile way to probably listen, to probably bring about, you already have the knowledge. You've had the 22 years of experience of working with, and I'm going to say varying levels of functionality within a family unit. So you're probably not surprised when you walk into an organization and have varying levels of functionality within the organization. So you relied on your own skill, your own facilitation, your own knowledge, stepped into a space and was able to have a transformational conversation and obviously some learning and some opportunities for them to engage. That's everything that I've been talking about with shaping the future of talent development is PowerPoint's not going to get us there. I mean, it's a great tool.
Yeah.
Worksheets, slicked branded worksheets are not always going to get us there. It's really about being able to have your finger on the pulse of what's happening in an organization. Walk me through maybe what that first, you walk in a door, you get driven to the space. And then I want to go back to this red phone thing, but you get driven to this space, you've set up the conditions that now you're in team, you're working together, both, when everybody feels like their butt's on the line, everybody's going to be extra vigilant in making it work, right? So you're driven to the space, you walk in the door, you've got this, this forestry group. Now I'm imagining this audience being like kind of Vancouver tough. I don't know. I could be wrong, but like,
Some of them may or may not be missing teeth.
okay, so we're talking about some tough guys that are out there working the forests and so on and so forth. You walk into this space as a family therapist. You had to be sweating at least a little on the inside, but maybe relying on your own. Talk me through this. What does that look like, Stephen?
I think you start at the foundational level is I'm gonna use a word that's gonna throw some of your listeners off, but do you actually love people?
Hmm,
Because if you don't, they'll smell it.
sure.
If you love building your consulting business, if you love the amount of money in your bank account, if you're an ideas person and you love your ideas, if you love building vector drawings with PowerPoint and you just love those, they will smell that. And in this case, they'll run you off the claim. They really will. I honestly thank God for our first client, which was the biggest logging organization on Vancouver Island, because they put up with nothing. They weren't even remotely polite. And so it was like, I was in the forge, my friends. It really was. They were the talent forge. There was actually a moment where they had a conversation at their boardroom in Vancouver saying, hey, this thing that Steven is building, is it ours or is it his? Because they were so invested that they also felt like some of the intellectual property may have actually been theirs as well.
Hmm.
So I know it sounds odd, but man, if you start at the level of love, I'm going to jump forward just a second. So now I'm in Santa Fe and I'm working with interagency wildland fire leaders, like the top leaders in the United States get together and they do a training to become certified as agency administrators, which those are the top decision maker on complex wildfires. So each one of them comes from a regular day job, maybe has 200, 300 employees under them. So a room of 80 people, 20 coaches, and all these experts that come in for 5 days and doing this thing. And then me, Switchback, that just drips in our model and facilitates throughout the 5 days. So the introduction was like this. I'm in the back of the room. They go, okay, so some of you heard about Steven and Switchback. A lot of you haven't. Anyways, I'm not even going to try to introduce him. Steve, why don't you introduce yourself? So I'm in the very back of the room. They're all at tables. And I've got this little headset thing on so I could just click my little mic on and go, okay, here we go, everybody. Buckle up. And then I go, hey, Who here has never hugged a Canadian? And this is not a huggy crowd. This is like Wildland Fire. This is like Montana Tough. I said, if I'm walking from here to there, this is your opportunity. Don't miss the opportunity. And so I start walking to the front of the room. All these people start popping up, giving me a hug. I feel like I'm how the fighters come into the ring, like into the stadium. Like,
Oh yeah.
I feel like this is crazy. Montana Tough guys with their belt buckles and their boots. They're standing up going, oh, I'm going to give you a hug, but no cuddles. Like, so they lean in. So by the time I walked that 100 feet from the back room to the front room, everything had changed because I've established that foundational piece. Is this guy going to love us? And I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, and there's HR and there's issues. I understand that. I've got really good boundaries, and I've got a marriage that's lasted for 40 years and thriving, and 11 grandkids. Like, I've got a great track record for knowing where the space is. But it's exactly the same thing I did with that 14-year-old. I sat down on the bench beside him, his very first practice with us, and actually leaned into him. I made a physical contact with him. And it's like, think about all these now power tools where you plug yourself in. I plugged into him and I said, I'm with you, man. I'm going to feel your pain. I'm going to share your victories, but we're team, whether we like it or not. And so I think as people that are trying to build loyalty with your your clients that you're working with, you got to figure out how are you going to make that very foundational connection. Go back to that initial, the origin story. This is crazy. The breakthrough had nothing to do with logging. The breakthrough was that the manager and the union chief were both brand new grandparents. So they're in their mid 50s. And both of their wives had a little talk with them and said, I've put up with a lot of your BS over the last 30 years. I probably should have left you a number of times. I'm just letting you know, if that BS spills into our relationship with our kids and our grandkids, I will leave you. So I will choose my relationship with my grandkid over being married to you. So, buddy, figure out how to change how you react to stimulus, because your model sucks. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but that's now the
Close
question
enough,
is,
I'm sure.
how did I get that intel? That's the main question. If I was buried in 80 slides of PowerPoint and all the lights were turned off and they were just working their way through the 3-ring binder, there wasn't a hope that I would have found that intel. So there's something about the methodology of how you work with a crowd. You'll get a different result. You'll get a different outcome. You'll get a different story. When I got those two stories, it was like, boom, now they're motivated. So I said, well, forget about your job, forget about the union. You want to retrain your brain for one specific reason, so you don't get kicked out of your own home. Otherwise, you're selling the boat, you're selling the cabin. Your life is going to demolish if you don't sort this out. So I found their core motivation, and the crazy thing, had nothing to do with work. So in our minds, when we are setting ourselves up to make that initial bond with people through, let's say, a foundation of love, or like, do you actually like people? And the next part is, how are you going to demonstrate that you like people? In our company, we measure home cooked meals. I know it sounds crazy, right? That's one of our metrics. So we'll have a team in Santa Fe or New Mexico, or like, we're doing a bunch of work in the Appalachian Mountains right now, which is crazy because we fly over 1,700 opportunities to go to there. But that's just how life is, right?
Right.
We work typically a 3-day model strategically on purpose, partly because of the travel costs and what we do. And on day one, we'll say, hey, just kidding around here, but does anybody have like a nice like mule deer roast sitting in their freezer that's a year old you'd like to cook up for tomorrow? We'd love to join you for dinner. And we start laughing off. And then at the end of the thing, we say, oh yeah, that dinner, we're serious.
It's funny.
And then I'm telling you, when you cross the threshold of a leader or a middle manager or just somebody, when you cross the threshold into their home, I'm telling you, there is now no competition. You don't have to think about that.
That reminds me of a story that Robert Cialdini talks about in his book Persuasion about an insurance agent, that one of the things that they would do is, essentially while they were having a conversation, it was the knock on the door, come in, and, so they were allowed into so many homes. All of these insurance agents had the same tools, the same scripts, the same whatever, but this one outperformed all of the others over and over again. And one of the only things that Cialdini saw them do was when they were inside, they would say, I left my pen out in the car.
Right.
If you don't mind, while you work on that form, I'm going to go edit. Could I let myself in?
Yes.
And so, literally, that was the only thing that was different about this one agent. And actually, Dr. Cialdini had looked and was like, this guy's a simpleton. He forgets stuff in the car, every single one of
I
these
don't
things.
know. Right.
And then when he asked him, he said, what's happening there? And he goes, come on, Bob, you should know this. Who do you just let walk into your home?
Yes.
Somebody that you trust, somebody that you engage with. And it was just activating that part of the brain that connects and trusts. And I don't care how big and how tough you are, everybody loves somebody and everybody needs to feel loved. And when they
Mhm.
don't, things go horribly awry. So the fact that you're tapping into that so early on obviously generates trust, generates that opportunity for them to feel validated, to feel connected. And let's be honest, we do nice things for people that care for us. And we may not necessarily do nice things for people that we don't care for. So, I love that. I love that concept of really kind of getting in team.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that you mentioned, and I want to go back to this, and I know we're short on time here, but you said red telephone, and that
Sure.
that has stuck with me since you said it. I want to understand, what is the red telephone, Stephen?
Sure. So all of us have I work just as hard as the next person, and I answer emails, and we have marketing campaigns and this and that. We try that and this, and we do all our things, which is great. But if I actually sit down and analyze the breakthrough moments in my life, they've almost all been red phone. And I think when we accept that, there's a humility that takes place in our lives. It says there's a bigger story than me going on here. I can't actually manipulate just the fact, how many clicks does it take to make a sale. That's not actually what's at play here. There's a bigger story. And so my wife and I, we have been really dedicated to tuning our minds to the red phone. So it sometimes happens this way. Back in my my private practice, I had one day that all 5 clients canceled,
Hmm.
and it was unusual. And so we just sat down. We said, "It's a red phone day today, so prepare yourself." We waited and waited. 11:15, the phone rang. One of my neighbors, one of my farmer neighbors, had just committed suicide, and I was the
Uh-huh.
first to the scene. And then his farm worker actually lived with us for the next 6 months because he was so traumatized by that experience. And so we go, oh, how is it possible that I became available? So it's much bigger than myself. I think, like, some people are like, oh, whatever, like, Steve, you're getting all metaphysical or spiritual on me, but truth is, people can sense whether you have a hope, whether you're delivering information or whether you're tapping into something that's maybe bigger. And so if I know we're short on time too, so I'm gonna go close to a takeaway here is the story that we tell about our own lives. And so I'll just give 2 examples. The one story I could tell, which was I've told it 1,000 times, which is, Stephen Falk was a gifted kid, and he soars up in elementary school, and I don't learn to read and write. So I become the gifted and intelligent underachiever. And then I have this cross I have to bear all my life, and I have to marry well in order just to be able to hand in essays and blah blah blah. And eventually I train my brain and I become better at reading and writing. And now I write for a living. Surprise, surprise. That's a neat story. But I have another story. The story is this. When I was 2 years old, there was a meningitis outbreak in our farming community, and a number of kids my age died. And I got meningitis, and I was paralyzed, stiff as a board. My parents drove me to the hospital knowing that I was going to die. They had a prayer with God, and they said, "We don't know why you're taking Steve, but we give him to you." I show up at the hospital. The doctor touches me. The nuns are hanging around because this is a dying kid. The second he touches me, I'm instantly, miraculously healed. that messes up the narrative of PowerPoint and let's just get her done and clicks and all that. All of a sudden, it's like, what in the world am I supposed to do with that? And so, in many ways, that origin story of a 2-year-old miraculous healing has to trump dyslexia. And people have to be able to, they don't have to know the story, but they have to be able to sense it. That when they hire you as a consultant, they're getting more than just information. They're getting more than just 7 ways to increase communication during a conflict. They're getting something that's packaged in hope.
You're getting a deeper story.
They're getting a deeper story. And then, I mean, and then once you tap into that story yourself and you're going, holy moly, here's another serendipitous moment. Here's another moment. Because, you know, we'll say things like, oh, like, how do you sustain your training and how you do all those things? If you create that moment for people in the room, that training lives forever. I'm telling you, it really does. Because
The
I've
experience.
traveled, yes,
Yeah.
I've had 20-second moments with a leader that I carry in my DNA today. So I didn't need a follow-up call. I didn't need this. I didn't need a whole sequence. I just needed that 20 seconds. And so I'm totally like, I'm of both minds. One is absolutely build a, you know, a sustaining model, right? That so you can help an organization move forward and but also build into your belief system that one micro conversation with you could change their life, or a micro conversation they have that you set up with a question at a round table. That round table talking with each other could change someone's life. So I'll often actually premise it that way. I'll say, hey, we're gonna do a breakout. We got 25 people in this room. I'm just letting you know, 3 of you probably will be rocked in a way that you'll walk out of this room changed. So no pressure, but everybody, the way you interact with each other in the next 10 minutes is going to change somebody's life from maybe despair to hope, to from here to here, from here to here. So let's get to work.
I love that.
So now there's an expectation that my story has that value, but so does their story have that value.
It's so powerful. And when we think about how we live our life, I will say one of the most impactful trainings that I've ever been to was going to the Amazon and getting a tour from one of the indigenous locals there, teaching me all of the different flora, the fauna, the watch outs, the things to be looking for, the beauty in the space. I mean, I can visually walk through that because it was an experience. I could have read all of that in a book. I could have read all of that in the Farmer's Almanac for that matter, but it wouldn't have stuck the way that I can literally still smell, hear the birds that were chirping, to see the red in the water from the tannins that had come off of the leaves. I mean, all of that impacted me in a way. So I really resonate with what you're saying. And I think there's so many great takeaways that we've had here is for that audience, you know, coming in with love and making sure that you're showing and demonstrating that you're on that team and that you are taking the actions, the behavioral actions to make in team versus, you know, out of team, and to really kind of take a step back, share your story and watch for those red phone moments. We barely scratch the surface here, Stephen. You know, in the interest of my audience, if they want to get a hold of you, how would they reach out to you?
So the simplest way is switchbackos.com. So the OS stands for operating system. There's a whole story behind the name Switchback as well, but we don't have time. But it's switchbackos.com, and then they can just contact us, and surprise, surprise, it goes to my inbox.
Nice. Well, thank you, Stephen, for your insights, for sharing these stories with us, and for coming on here, because I can tell that you love what you do, you love your clients, and you love the people that are listening, because you've dropped some incredible insights. So thank you so much for your time and energy today.
Yeah, thank you, Jay, and thank you, Talent Forge for the invite.
And thank you, audience, for tuning in to this episode of the Talent Forge, where together we are shaping the future of training and development.